Hello, everybody. Maths is what everybody did at the weekend. You were actually supposed to have a test this weekend, but you're going to have it next weekend. Um, just so you know, in case you don't already. 3, 7, and 8 from the Year 7 booklet. Absolutely. Here is the Year 7 booklet. Question 3. Right. Any other questions, please just let me know. We'll do them. This person asked 30 pupils which subject they liked best. Um, which subject did 20% of boys choose? Right. The total number of boys is 10. Okay? 10 boys. Which subject did 20% of those 10 boys choose? 20% of 10. Well, define 20% of 10. You could say, well, 10% of 10 is 1. 10% of any number means dividing it by 10. And then 20% of that number is double that because you've doubled 10 to get 20, which means you double that to get 2. So which subject did 2 of the boys choose? Looks to me like English. Which subject did 35% of the girls choose? Right. So now there's 20 girls, and I want to find out which subject 35% of them chose. So that's now 35% of 20. To find 35% of 20, I will first find 10% of 20, which is dividing this by 10, so that's 2. Then I can jump straight to 30% because that's 3 times bigger. 3 times bigger than 2 is 6. But that's 30%. I need 35%, don't I? So 5% must be half of whatever 10% is. So if 10% was 2, half of that is 1. So to find 35% now, I would take my 5% number and my 30% number and add them together. So 35% of 20 is 7. Which subject did 7 of the girls choose? Maths. And then, in my survey, science was equally popular with boys and girls. Explain why he was wrong. Well, he's saying it because 3 boys and 3 girls chose science, but because there were fewer boys in total than girls, we need to say that 3 out of 10 boys chose science, but 3 out of 20 girls chose science. Now, 3 out of 10 is a bigger number than 3 out of 20. So actually, it's more popular among boys than it is among girls, basically. And which subject was equally popular? That's a little bit harder, I think. I think that's English, and I'll tell you why. Because of the boys, 2 out of 10 chose English, and of the girls, 4 out of 20 chose English. Now, 2 out of 10 and 4 out of 20 are exactly the same fraction because you could simplify one to the other, or you could times that by 2 and 2 to get 4/20. So that's why English is the answer to that question. Um, 7 and 8, and then I'll do 15B from booklet 2 as well. Might be it. There might not be many questions today. Great. 7. Oh, wow. Okay. There are 600 fish in the lake. 1 and 600, sorry, 600 fish in a lake. They are bream, tench, perch, and carp. Right. 1/6 of the fish are bream. When you get this information in a question, um, the test topics I will tell you, I can resend the email basically. So I sent an email with the um, links to lots of information basically, but I can recreate that in the chat in a moment, and then you can have it all. Um, Right, 1/6 of the fish are bream. So what a sensible thing to do now is to work out 1/6 of this number. 1/6 of 600. If you're ever in doubt about doing these, take this number, divide it by the number at the bottom, which is 100, and then times that number by the top of the fraction, and that doesn't do anything because you're timing by 1. So 100 um, of the fish are bream. Let's carry on reading. 30% of the fish are tench. So it'd be helpful now to find out what 30% of this number is. When you're doing these things, as I say, as you're reading something, you should do that working out as you're going along. So let's find 30% of the fish. Easiest way to do that is to find 10%. 10% of this number is 60. And 30% therefore is 3 times bigger than this number because 10 times 3 is 30. 60 times 3 is 180. Let me see what else people have said. Yep, I'll get through booklet 3 in a moment. And so 180 of the fish, of those 600 fish, are these tench. And then it says the ratio of perch to carp is 5 to 3. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is we need to figure out how many of these there are first, and they're split into this ratio. So the way we'll do that is we'll say, okay, we started with 600 fish. I already know that 100 of them are bream and 180 are tench. So if we take them away, we'll be left with how many perch and carp there are, because I've already counted the bream and tench, right? 600 take away 100 is 500. 500 take away 180 is 220. I think 5 take away 1 is 4, take away 1 is 3, is it 320? Yeah, 320, sorry. 600 take away 100 take away 180 is 320. So there's 320 of these two left. Okay, so perch and carp. That's why we had to do all that work first. Okay, now what we need to do is split 320 into this ratio. To split a number into a ratio, what you should do is add the ratios together. That makes 8. Then take your number and divide it by that 8. 320 divided by 8 is 40. You might be able to do that with your 4 and 8 times tables. What that tells you is that one of these pieces, so think of these as 5 pieces, and that's 3 pieces. One of these pieces is worth 40 fish. So the perch is 5 of those pieces. If we times that by 40, 5 times 40 is 200. So 200 of the fish are perch. And if you do 3 times 40, because there's 3 parts there, that makes 120. 120 of the fish are carp. But the question is, how many perch are there? And the answer is these 200. So you have to do all that work to get to that answer. 7, and then the last one from that one is 8. Okay, 20% of the children in a sports club play tennis. 25% who play, oh God, that's awkward. 25% of the children who play tennis also play rounders. Okay, that's quite a hard question, isn't it? So we know uh, okay, what I'm going to do for is quite hard this, but I know that 20% of these people in the sports club play tennis, right? Um, and there's 8 children who play both tennis and rounders. How many children are there in the sports club altogether? How are we going to do this? I'll just give me a moment to think about this. Okay, got it. Quite difficult, but I will get to booklet 2 just a moment. Yes, sure. Okay, quite a hard question, but if you imagine this many people play tennis, that's 20% of the children in the sports club play tennis. Okay, now of the children who play tennis, so imagine these are all the children who play tennis. Okay, of them, 25% also play rounders. So 25% of this 20 is a quarter of this 20. So a quarter of 20 is 5. So 5% play tennis and rounders. Do you see what I mean? It's quite an awkward one to do because 20% of them play tennis, but of those 20%, 25% of that number also play rounders. So 25% of that 20 is 5%. So 5% of everybody plays tennis and rounders. And we know that there's 8 children who play both tennis and rounders. So this 8 is represented by 5% of the sports club. Now, the easiest way to do the next bit is to figure out how many people are all together, is to think of what fraction this is. This is 1 out of 20. That's what 5% is. It's 5 over 100, which is 1 over 20. So 1/20th of the entire club is 8 people who play tennis and rounders. So if 1/20th is 8, then 8 times 20 must be everybody in the club, which is 160. There must be 160 who do that. So in terms of working out, what you'd have to say is something like this. 25% of 20% is 5%. 5% of everybody equals 8 children. And so 8 times 5% or 120 is the total number of people altogether. Quite a difficult one to explain that one. Right. Let me move on to booklet number 2. Let's see what this was. Okay. Let me try and do this in order. So you said 2, 6, 7, 12, and 14, which should an 8. 2, which is longer, 3/4 of a day or 1,000 minutes? You must show you're working. Okay. A day is 24. What I'm going to do is convert this to minutes, right? So one day is, you'll probably use a calculator for this. I don't worry about it. One day is 24 hours. Now, 3/4 of a day is 3/4 of this number. 3/4 of 24 is 18, because a quarter is 6. Okay. So that's 18 hours. To turn 18 hours into minutes, you times by 60. Okay, you can do that yourself, or I'm just going to do it on a calculator. 18 times 60 is 1,080 minutes. So the question is, which is longer? Well, 1,080 minutes is longer than 1,000 minutes, isn't it? So you have to convert that to minutes like that. 6. Is her method correct? No, because if you want to find what this does is finds 30% of a number. 30% as a decimal is 0.3. So if you're timesing a number by 0.3, what you're doing is you're finding 30% of the number, not 3% of the number. 3% as a decimal is 0.03. So be careful of that extra zero. And then B, Lauren worked to work this out. Her answer is 50. Is a method correct? The answer is no, because without even doing any working out, this fraction, 30 over 29, is an improper fraction, which means it's bigger than 1. If you times a number bigger than 1 by another number, this number gets bigger. It gets bigger. And so her answer being 58 is impossible, because the answer to the question should be bigger than 60, because 30 over 29 is bigger than 1. Okay. That's 6B done. 7, I think you mentioned as well, and 8. The decimal is closest in value to that. That's tricky, isn't it? Well, I'll tell you what you should try and know. You should try and know that 1 over 20 as a decimal is this. We actually did it in the last paper that I just did, where 5% was 1 over 20. If you know that, then this becomes a little bit easier, because 10 over 20, you know, is a half, because it's a half, which means 11 over 20 is an extra 1 over 20 on top of that. So it must be 0.55 if you add those together, if you think about adding those together. So the closest to it is probably that then, isn't it? I mean, that's the closest to a strange question. Okay, number eight seems to be, I mean, I think you could do number eight. I think it's a little bit of, lack of effort to not do question eight. Question eight, um, the total cost of doing all this. Well, you're going to buy four adult tickets at £15 each, so you times that together to get 60. Two child tickets at £20 each, that's 20, so that's £80 already. Okay. A 10% booking fee is added. So that means another 10% of this. 10% of this number is 8. So it's now £88. So you should get that far. The hardest part of this question is the last bit, which is this extra 3%. So we need to do 3% of this number on top of it. The best way to do that is to figure out 1% of this number. To find 1% of any number, you divide it by 100. If you divide this number by 100, you like imagine there's a decimal point at the end. It goes back two places and it's 0.88. So 88p is what 1% is. So 3% would be this times 3. So let's do that over here. 88p times 3. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 3 is 24. Add 2 is 26. And 0 times 3 is 0. Add 2 is £2.64. So there's an extra £2.64 that's added on because you're paying by credit card as well. So if you add that on, £2.64 to that, I think you get £90.64 as your total cost of doing all of that. Okay. 8, 12, 14, 15b. Right, 12. I really shouldn't need to do question 12. Something take away 8 equals 5. If I said to you, figure out what that number is, something take away 8 equals 5. I think you can work that out. So we won't do that. 14. So to solve this equation, whenever you're solving an equation and there's like a, remember the objective of solving an equation is to get this letter by itself. That's what we're trying to do. If you have a number that's being added or minus, like on its own, you can move it to the other side. In this case, the -9 becomes a +9 on the other side. So you see how that -9 is there now. 12 add 9 we can work out is 21. And then to get the x by itself, we move this 3 by timesing it, because it's being divided here. To move it there, we times it. It's the opposite of dividing is timesing. 21 times 3 is 63, and I think that should be the answer. Mhm. And then somebody mentioned 15b as well, right at the beginning. And there's an 18. 15b and 18. Yeah, I haven't got to booklet 3 yet. I'll be getting there. Okay, let me do all of 15a first. Chocolate bars cost this much each. Mary buys 6. She pays with a £10 note. Write down an expression. So if I said to you a chocolate bar costs £1 each, if I did, and I said, well, work out the change, you would end up doing 10 take away, because this is your change, the cost of the chocolate bars, and which would be 6 times 1, right? That's what you do if it was £1 each. But they're not £1 each, they're X pounds each. So all you do is you change that to an X, or you write it with the 6. So that is how you do that. It is just imagine there's a number there and think, what would you do? And that's what you do. That's 15. Question 15b. He buys 4 chocolate bars, pays with a £10 note. He receives twice as much change as Mary. Use an algorithm to work out the value of X. Okay, where's Mary? Mary's here. Oh, that's a hard question. So Ben's change. Let's do Ben's change. Would be 10 minus, he bought 4 chocolate bars. So each chocolate bar still costs X. It would be 4X this time, right? That's Ben's change. And we're told that Ben's change is twice as much as Mary's change. So that equals 2 times this thing here. Let's time this by 2 now, okay? So he receives twice as much as this. So that equals twice what this is. Twice what this is 20 minus 12x. If you double both of them. Okay? Quite a difficult question. And then you have to solve this equation, which requires you to get the x's together on one side. So I'm going to move this minus and add it to that minus 4. Minus 4 add 12. Be careful, it's minus 4 add 12 is 8. And then I'm going to move this 10 by taking it away. 20 take away 10 is 10. And then I'm going to do 10 divided by 8 as the answer. 10 divided by 8 is, well, if you change it, it is 1 and 2/8, or 1 and a quarter, or £1.25. We have worked out that a chocolate bar costs £1.25. And then 18. Mr. and Mrs. Bell have twin daughters and a son. Mr. Bell is 4 years older than Mrs. Bell. God. Okay, so we've got Mr. Bell, Mrs. Bell. We've got the twins, twin, and the son. Okay, write out like this. Let X be the age of the twin daughters. So let's say these twins are X years old. We're told that the twin daughters are 7 years older than the son, which means that the son is 7 years younger than whatever X is. You see what I mean? If it's 7 years less, that's what your age is. If it's 7 years, if the twins are 7 years older. Mrs. Bell is 3 times older than their twin daughters. So if the twins are X, Mrs. Bell is 3 times X, 3X. Mr. Bell is 4 years older than Mrs. Bell. Mrs. Bell is 3x. Mr. Bell must be 4 more than that. So his age is that. And so what we've got here is all of the different ages written down. And it says the sum, that means add together, is 150. So if we add all of these together, you get 150. That's what it's telling you. You add all of the ages together. If we add up all the x's, I've got 3x, add 3x is 6x, 7x, 8x, 9x. I've got 9 x's there. If you add up the numbers, it's 4 minus 7, which is minus 3. Okay, so this is my equation. You should be able to work it out from here. If you add the 3, you get 153. Something's wrong. No, I don't think it is. No, it's not. It's fine. And then if you divide by 9, let's do 153 divided by 9, using a bus stop. 9 goes into 15 once, remainder 6, and it goes into 63 7 times, which means that x is 17. So the twins are 17 years old. The son must be 10 because he's 7 years less. Mrs. B must be 17 times 3, which is 51. And the Mr. Bell must be 4 years older, so 55. That's how you form an equation. Right, that is all of booklet 2 completed. Or at least the question that you've asked, I believe. And booklet 3, 2, 6, 7, 12, 14. Let's see what these are. Okay, probably need a calculator for some of this. In a sale, the original price of a bag was reduced by a fifth. The sale price is $29.40. Work out the original price. So let's say this is your original price. What you did was reduced it by a fifth. This is where the complication is. Reducing by a fifth. It says the sum of the ages, not the sum of the ages of all the people. What's the difference? It says the sum of the ages, not the sum of the ages of all the people. I don't understand what the difference is between those 2 points. The sum of the ages is the sum of the ages of everybody there. Because they've all got ages. So yes, it's the adding up all of their, the sum of the 5 ages. So we had 5 ages. We had 1 age, another age, another age, another age, and another age. They were our 5 ages. We added them all together. Okay. So the tricky thing in this question is what reducing by a fifth means. Reducing by a fifth. If you reduce something by a fifth, what you're actually doing is finding 4/5 of it. That is reducing by a fifth. So that's the hard bit of this question. What they have done is they have taken an original price, reduced it by a fifth, which means they've times it by four-fifths to get the new price, which is £29.40. And so if you want to figure out what the original price is, your calculation is that divided by this, which you're welcome to use a calculator for this one. I think you would have a calculator for this kind of question. 29.4 divided by four-fifths is £36.75. That would be the answer there. The homework has definitely been sent out to those people who are in Manchester. But what I'm going to do now is um, just put in this. Oh, I did forget to send the email to you guys. Um, I'll make sure that goes tomorrow to you for the test on Sunday, just so you know. But the topics are what we have done recently, so you're going to be fine with it. I'm just going to do this now for everybody, which is find my test email. So for key stage 3, you might just want to copy and paste this thing that I'm about to put in the chat. Could be that the message is too long. Let me try something else. Okay, so the first bit of that shows you the biology and chemistry bits, and the second bit of this will show the physics and maths bits. I'll put that. I have sent an email to everybody, but the Manchester people haven't got it yet, because can't know why. So anyway, that just tells you, you know, as a little reminder of what the topics are. For biology, it's to do with disease and photosynthesis, two topics that we have done in the last couple of months. Chemistry, it is energetics, which is endothermic and exothermic reactions of what they are, really. And organic chemistry, which is quite hard. It's to do with the hydrocarbons and crude oil. That was probably a tricky one, but there won't be too much difficulty on that. In physics, we did a topic called forces, and we also did a lesson on equations in general, just using equations in physics. In maths, angles, and the statistics lesson that you will have done, which was to do with mean, mode, median. That's kind of what you have, so you know. So in the chat bit that I've sent to everybody is there. That is all of them. So I've sent it. If you're here, you've got them in the chat. There you go. Copy and paste it somewhere, and then you've got links to everything. Is that all of them? Yes, that's all of them. Should I revise that? Yeah, if you want. Might other topics come on the test other than these? Always, yeah. I'm going to say yes to that question, always. Partly because, like in biology, if you do a question on photosynthesis, it is very difficult for that question not to involve, for example, some cells. So it is a bit of, you have to assume it's a bit of everything. But as I always say, when it comes to these tests that you do here, it is all, for me or for us, it is about your giving you practice of doing these tests. It might not be that you always do really, really well in them, but you get practice of doing tests, and the more you do practice of things, the better you get at them. So it's not really about the result this time, it's more the fact that this should then help you improve the next time you do it. That's kind of how I see this. Let me continue with this. 6, 7, 12. 120 women and 80 women were asked if they would write. Altogether, a quarter of the people said yes. Okay, altogether, there were 200 people, weren't there? If a quarter of them said yes, a quarter of 200 is 50 people that said yes. One third of the men said yes. So the men were 120 men. What's a third of 120? A third of 120 is 120 divided by 3, which is 40. Can you give a question that would likely come on the test? What is the equation for photosynthesis? There you go. That's almost certainly on the verbal test that you will do. That's fairly simple. At least that's a standard question on photosynthesis, which is what is the equation for it, which you should know, or which part of a cell is where photosynthesis takes place. If I was going to ask about disease, I might say, um, do you know how a vaccination works? Like what is involved in a vaccination, or what happens in it? Um, there were the things I might throw in for biology. For chemistry, I might so with the equations, just to be clear, you won't need to learn any of the equations. You will get given all of the equations. It's about using them. So don't worry about learning any equations. You will have all of the equations you need because that's what will happen as you progress to year 10, 11, and stuff. You will get given all of the equations. So you have all of the equations. It's more, can you use them to answer a question? That's what it is, which is more math than anything else. A third of the men said yes. So 40 of the men said yes. Now, that means if 50 people said yes and 40 men said yes, that means that 10 women said yes. The question is, what fraction of the women said yes? Well, 10 women out of the 80 women said yes. So that becomes 10 out of 80. Um, what else was there? 2, 6, 7, 12, 14. 7. Um, Right. On Saturday, a museum had 775 visitors. 28% of them were given a questionnaire. How many visitors? So you have to find out 28% of 175. I shouldn't really do this for you. But 10% of 175 is 17.5 because you have to move the decimal point back once. 20% is therefore double that. Double 17 and a half is 35. Um, So 20% is 35. I need another 8% still. How's the best way to do that? Uh, the best way to do that is find 1%. 1% of this number, move the decimal point back twice, is 1.75. And so 8% is that times 8. So then do that times 8 separately and see what it is. 5 times 8 is 40. 7 times 8 is 56. Add 4 is 60. And 1 times 8 is 8, add 6 is 14. And I get 14 for 8%. So if I'm trying to find out 20%, I do 28%. You do the 20% plus the 8%. 35 add 14 is 49. I think that's 49. Organic chemistry is about things called hydrocarbons and crude oil, as in the oil that we dig out of the ground. And what we do with it, we use it for things like petrol and diesel. But it goes through a process called fractional distillation, which is quite a big thing that we put it all into. And it kind of separates out into different pieces, which are all very, very useful to us. That's what it's about. But I think for you guys, I wouldn't stress too much about that. It is not going to be majorly complicated stuff on it. On Sunday, the museum had 242 visitors. 2/11ths of them were given the questionnaire. Were more people given it on Saturday or Sunday? So we need to figure out what 2/11ths of 242 is. And stopped. How do I do that? Well, I would find 1/11th of it by doing 242 divided by 11. 242 divided by 11 is 2 remainder 2, 22. That's 1/11th. So 2/11ths is double that, which is 44. So 44 people were given the questionnaire on Sunday, and 49 people were given it on Saturday. The question is, were more people given it on Saturday or Sunday? Well, more people were given it on Saturday because 49 were given it on Saturday and 44 were given it on Sunday. Crude oil fracture distillate, yes, that's what it is. I mean, there's technically a tiny bit more than that called cracking. There are also these things called alkanes, but that's all part of the oil topic. So it's not, yeah, there's a few other pieces to it. If you read through, so in that chat, I've sent a link. One of them says organic chemistry. If you click on that, let me see what happens. Hopefully it works. Yeah. Oh, no, it doesn't work. Oh, no, I've clicked on the wrong link. the organic chemistry link opens up some notes on organic chemistry. Now, these notes are aimed at more than you need, but if you just glance through them and read them, you should be okay. They are kind of to do with the more GCSE level of the topic, so there's more of it than you're going to get asked about. Um, what else was there in here? 2, 6, 7, 12, 14. Done 7, 12. Three rods. Two of the rods are the same length. Work out the three possible values for x. Okay, oh, horrible. Um, so two of these rods are the same length. So let's pretend these two are the same length. If those two are the same length, then x plus 4 is the same as 11, which means that x is 7. That's if those two are the same. But let's say this one and this one are the same. If those two are the same, then so that's a one possible answer. Then 3x minus 7 is 11, which means that 3x is 18 and x is 18 divided by 3, which is 6. So that's a different possible answer if we made those two the same. What have we not done? We've not made these two the same. So let's make those two the same. If you solve this, I would move the x to there, subtracting it. I would add 7 to get 11, and I would half it to get 5.5. That is another possible answer. So when it says work out the three possible values for x, that's what it wants you to do. Separately, do those three pieces. Um, and I think one more. 2, 6, 7, 12, and 14. Here's a number machine. Calculate the output when the input is 1. If I put the number minus 1, sorry, minus 1, I add 7 to it to get 6. Then I divide by 2 to get 3. That's it. It's just going through the stages, each one. And then here is a different number machine. Oh, this is quite hard. The input is equal to the output. When they say stuff like that, you've got to use a letter. X, for example. And they're saying that that is the same as what we get out. So X. Work out what that is. So if I take this X and times it by 5, it's 5X. If I then take away 6, I take away 6. And the answer is X. And I should be able to work this out. If I take away that, it's 4x minus 6 equals nothing, because there's nothing on that side. If I add 6, 4x equals 6. And if I divide by 4, x is 6 over 4, which is 3 over 2, or 1.5. So if I have number 1.5, if I times it by 5, then take away 6, I end up back where I started. Let me prove it. 1.5 times 6, times 5, take away 6. The answer should be 1.5, and it is. So we have tested that. Okay, that covers all of the questions that people have asked. I will stop at that point and I will return in 7, 8 minutes when hopefully people might ask me some questions about circle theorems or quadratic inequalities and sequences and stuff like that. Right, I'll be back. Right. I'm going to just until some. Oh, that's more already. 15 in the year 10 one. Is that this one? Sure. So, weirdly, this is not really a circle theorems question. It is actually a Pythagoras question. Because the only circle theorem you're meant to know is the fact that when you have a radius meeting a tangent, it creates a 90-degree angle over here. So what we have actually got here is a right-angled triangle. And the question is to work out the length from here to here. Okay, let's worry about that later. Let's just look at this triangle. Now, what I can do with this triangle, because it's a right angle triangle, and since I know two of the sides, is work out the length of the entire third side. Because Pythagoras tells us that these two sides squared and added together equal the hypotenuse, which is the longest side. 5 squared add 12 squares, I can tell you, is 169, which means x is the square root of 169, which is 13. So what I've worked out is that all of that is 13, or all of that is 13. Now, we only want the red bit, which means I want to get rid of this distance over here. Now, this little distance over here, let's do that in green, is also a line that goes from the middle to the edge of the circle, as was this line. Now, a line that goes from the middle to the edge of the circle is called a radius, and it cannot be different in a circle. So if that's 5, this has to be 5. And so if all of that line is 13, and this much of it is 5, then the bit that we want is 13 take away 5, which is 8. I will just, until I receive anything else, start looking at some other questions from here, just to go through. Oh, 14 as well. Question 14. Find the size of angle ACO. Now, I remember this being awkward. This one here. Okay. Okay. A few different things that we can do here. There's quite a lot of different ways to do these questions. But it's not easy, this one. First of all, there is in circle, the most complicated circle theorem is something called the alternate segment theorem, which is when you have a line meeting a tangent and making an angle, then if that line makes an angle somewhere else at the edge of the circle, then the angles here and here are exactly the same as each other. And we have that situation here. We have a line making an angle of 53 degrees, and then that line has gone and made an angle at the edge of the circle there, which means that this angle over here has to be the same as this angle over here. So in other words, this is 53 degrees, firstly. Then, what would I do? I'm trying to find a quicker way to do this. I know what this angle is. Yeah, okay. I'm going to draw a line here. Remember, this is all 53 degrees, all of this. Sometimes in these harder questions, you have to draw your own line in. So I'm actually going to draw a line from here to here. Okay, the reason that's helpful is because it tells me that this is 27 degrees, because that must be the same as this. So we have here an isosceles triangle. So if this is 27, then so is that. And remember, all of this was 53, we said. So if that's 27, this is 53 minus 27, which is 26. So that is 26. And then we have another isosceles triangle over here. You have to look out for these isosceles triangles in circle theorems, which means that the two base angles are the same, which means that that is also 26 degrees. Now, I appreciate I have not given reasons here, but you have to explain that. So you'd say something like um, angle, what did we say first? We said CAB, which was all of that, equals 53, because we said the alternate segment theorem. I'm just going to write that briefly. Then we worked out that angle OAB was 27 degrees, and you're going to say because it's an isosceles triangle. Then we said that angle CAO is 26 because we could just say 53 minus 27. Your explanation for that, because that's what it was. And then finally, we said that ACO, which is what we were after down here, was also 26 because it was another isosceles triangle. So in terms of your explanations for this, you're going to have to say all of that stuff. 15, I think I just did, but I'll do that again. Sure. Question 15. I'll go through it again, it's fine. You obviously should arrive slightly late, it's okay. So the question is to work out the length of this line here. Okay. And the only circle theorem you're meant to use here, this is almost not a circle theorems question, but you're meant to know that when you have a radius, let me do that in a different color, a radius meeting a tangent, it does so at 90 degrees. So what we have got here is a right-angled triangle, which is 5 there and 12 there. What can we do with right-angled triangles if we know two of the sides? We can work out the third side using something called Pythagoras. We know that 5 squared plus 12 squared is that third side squared. 5 squared plus 12 squared is 169, which means x is the square root of 169, which is 13. So we have worked out that all of this length here, all of it, is 13. But we don't want all of it. We only want the blue bit of it. And therefore we want to get rid of this bit of it. And this bit of it is also 5 because this is 5. They're both the radius of the circle. It has to be the same distance. So therefore this blue bit here is the 13, which is the whole line. Take away the 5, which is 8. Would you have to remember the reason in an exam? Yeah, yes. I mean, if the question says, like the previous one that we just did, where it says, give the reasons for each stage of your working, you do have to explain a bit. It's like, it's not really long explanations, but there has to be something written down to explain why you have got to these numbers. Um, which, to be fair, if you get the question right and you know how to do it, you already know the explanations. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got there. So it's really about writing down your thought process as to how to get to the answer. So if this question hadn't said that, it just says find the angle ACO, then you would have done the same work that I've just done, which is think about the isosceles triangle and do this and this and this. All you're doing is you're writing down those steps as you're going along. Would this topic be in a non-calculator exam? I don't see why not. It depends on the question, but I mean, yeah, I don't see why not at all in this because none of these are difficult calculation. What's the hardest calculation you're gonna have to do? Like 180 minus a number, or like that's about it, right? There's no complicated decimals or weird things in this. It's just adding and taking away things. So there's no reason why it wouldn't be in a non-calculator paper. Um, until I get some more, I might just go through some other ones, like this one. Just as a reminder, you do have a test this week, and for those of you who are here in year 10, what I can do to assist slightly, in case you haven't received an email, or at least haven't got the email that I did send. Oh, where is it? In the chat, what I will do now is just put, I mean, it's almost the same as the key stage 3 one, but the chemistry biology topics include disease, photosynthesis, and homeostasis that you possibly could get asked on, which are like the nervous system bits that we did. Um, I've just put some links to things there. For chemistry, it includes endothermic and exothermic reactions and organic chemistry. For maths, it includes forces in physics, particle theory, which is like solids, liquids, and gases stuff. Um, and in the maths, there's quadratic equations, statistics, and circle theorems. Look at that. So I've just sent you basically what I put in an email to everybody last week. Um, yeah. Okay, I'm just going to do a couple more because, why not? If you are here and you're 11, I don't know if anybody is, but if you are, then we haven't mentioned any topics to you for hopefully obvious reasons. Um, Work out the value of x in this question. This is a four-sided shape inside a circle. There is a rule to do with those, which is that the opposite angles add up to 300, no, 180. The opposite angles add up to 180, which means that this angle, take away 118, is what that angle is. So 62 is what that must be. And then there is another circle theorem, usually the very first one you learn, which is that when you have an arc of a circle that makes an angle in the middle of the circle, then the angle in the middle of the circle is always double any angle it makes at the edge of the circle. So this must be double this 62, which would make it 124. Yes, we just sent the homework because the notes were really just practice questions. So we just sent the homework booklets because, I mean, the lessons that we did were largely just doing practice questions. I can give you them if you want, but it wasn't the same as the topic-based lessons where you have the notes for. So you don't have to copy up any notes anyway for those when we do the terminal exam question lessons. So you just have the homeworks because the topics are just the same as what we have done previously. Okay. Although circle theorems, to be fair, you need to get the notes for that, which I will give you because that was the lesson I did online. Right. Shall I just do another one? Like this one? Um, um, AOC. Now, as I said, sometimes in these questions, you do have to draw in a line to make an angle that you might need. In this case, you have no choice because the question says find the size of angle AOC, which doesn't actually exist yet until you draw a line from A to O, and then you have AOC magically created over there. So you would have to draw that line into this question. Um, then what can we do? We probably have to draw another line in a minute, but I'll tell you what I can see. I can see that we have something called the alternate segment theorem here, which is that this line has made an angle of 65 degrees, and then that line has gone and made an angle somewhere else, which means that all of this is 65 degrees. Anything else that's useful? Maybe this angle here, because this is a radius and a tangent that are 90 degrees. 90 take away 65 is 25. I don't know if that's helpful. Um, is it helpful? Is there anything else I can do with this question without drawing another line? I don't want to draw another line. Oh yeah, got it. Okay. This is an isosceles triangle. They've told you that those two are the same length, which means that this big triangle is an isosceles triangle, which means that this angle being 65, this angle has to be 65 as well. And since we've got 25 of it there, this must be 40. And then what we have here is another little isosceles triangle, where if that's 40, this is 40, that makes 80, which means this must be 100. And then you've ended up magically with 100 degrees as your answer there. Um, any other questions from me? I know with some of the students that I taught, I did most of these questions in the lesson. Let me think of what I'll do, since the people are here. I'll tell you what I think would be beneficial for you with regards to your test. So, again, I don't know I don't know what's in the test, but I'm just telling you based on the topics, what I would suggest that you should know. So, in biology, we are doing a topic called disease or defense against disease or infection and response, whatever you want to call it. The kind of things that I would. Oh, there's more. There's another question. Um, oh, sorry, I've not even seen. Can you do every question in the year 10 homework? No. Oh, I've just seen these questions. Okay. Yeah, I'll go through those. I will just quickly, before I do that, just tell you, for those of you in year 10, in terms of things, disease, make sure you know that there are four types of pathogen. They are bacteria, virus, fungi, protist. Make sure you know how a vaccination works in terms of the whole process. Yeah. Um, what else? You have photosynthesis. Just make sure you know the equation. Make sure you know they happen inside chlorophyll. There's not much else. Oh, there's things. The things that affect the rate of photosynthesis are light intensity, temperature, and carbon dioxide concentration. Remember what limiting factors means? It means that if two of these are really high, one of them is probably in short supply, and that limits the rate of photosynthesis. Other things, the nervous system homeostasis, this chain of events, receptor, sensory neuron, central nervous system, motor neuron, effector, and then you can say stimulus and response at the end if you like. But these pieces of nervous system response are important. Let me just see if I've sent that. Ooh, Okay. Um, let's do some of these then, if I can find where they are. Oh my God, from next week I want to be doing this every single day. Oh, um, okay. Right, so I've been sent some questions, which all of you are welcome to do at some point. It doesn't mean that I can always get through them, but I will do my best. Starting with, oh, geez. Okay, this one. Mhm. Okay, this sometimes with harder circle theorems questions, you just get everything in algebraic terms with no numbers whatsoever. Um, what is helpful here? Okay, this is a radius, this is a tangent, which means this is a 90-degree angle, as is this over here. Okay, and then what I've got here, oh, do I do it like this? Do I do it like that? It's the question, prove that y equals 90 plus a half x. I'm sure I did this question the other day. Okay, yeah, I think I've done it. So it's quite a difficult one, this. But if we take this four-sided shape, okay, if I said to you, let's work out what this angle over here is, then a four-sided shape, the angles add up to 360, don't they? So it would be 360 minus these two 90s minus this x. That is 180 minus x. That's what this angle over here is. And then I'm going to now work out what this angle here is. Okay. So because that is angles around a point, I can say that this angle is 360 minus the angle that I've already just found, which was 180 minus x. Yeah. What does that give you? It gives you 360 minus 180 plus x, which is 180 plus x. Okay. Then this is the hard bit, I think. So do you remember this rule, which is the center of a circle, that angle is twice as big as this angle over here. Okay. But you see, that is how it usually looks. But what people forget sometimes is that if I now make this angle really big, okay, so instead of this being the arc that I use, this one, I make the arc much bigger. If I make the arc like that, okay, then the angle that they've made in the middle is now this here. Do you see what I mean? That's that angle there. That would be 2x. And then from here, if I make an angle there, then this angle is still half of that angle. It's just not an obvious way to see that circle theorem, because normally you see it like that, if that makes sense, right? And then it goes like that. But this actually is the same situation, where this is angle here is double whatever angle that is. So y is a half of whatever angle this is. And now this angle we just worked out as being this. So y is that divided by 2, which is the same as this. Because you halve the 180 and half the x. So that is a difficult circle theorem question, but good to see it. Let me see what else there was in here. Let's see what this is before I decide to do it. Um, okay. This is a topic that at least for your year 10 you probably haven't done yet, but it's to do with the sine rule, I suspect. Um, Revising English language and lit. For a start, I would join on a Monday to do the things that we do. Um, that would be my first piece of advice. Literature, I can't really help with literature, but language, what I would my immediate advice for language is to look for on the internet model answers to questions. Model answers as in answers that would score grade 8, 9, or very high marks, and look at why those things get those grades and why you are not getting those things, and see if you can see the difference and see if you can, in the short term, um, reach that sort of standard of writing. In this triangle, RS to ST is in the ratio 1 to 4, right? Usually, when you have no numbers and it just gives you a ratio, one of the sensible things to do is use like X and in this case 4X as your sort of values, because it just allows you to, because that's what a ratio is. A ratio is a real number, but it's been simplified, but we don't know what it's been simplified from. But we do know that if one of them's X, the other one's 4X. It kind of is, it works if you do that. RS, we'll just call it X, and ST, we'll call it 4x, using the sine rule. The sine rule says that sine of an angle divided by the side opposite it equals sine of some other angle in the triangle divided by the side opposite it. Okay? Okay, and the complicated thing here will be knowing what sine 130 is. This, I'm going to assume this is a non-calculated question, which makes this pretty hard to do. If you multiply this over, you get 4x sine theta over x equals, in fact, no, I think I'll get it, equals sine 135. The benefit now is that these x's cancel, leaving you with 4 sine theta equals sine 135. I don't know what it means by the exact value of sine theta, but for now, I'm just going to say it is this divided by 4. That probably isn't the answer because sine 135, you possibly, I don't have my calculator with me, can figure out an exact trig value for it, but I'm not going to go into that for now. But at the very least, you get this far. Sine 135 is going to be something that you can technically work out using the graph. Um, oh yeah. Well, if you've learnt the value for sine 45, which in my head is root 2 over 2, but correct me if I'm wrong, um, then sine 135, because due to the symmetry of the graph, is the same, because it's the same distance from 90 as 45 is. So it is the same answer, sine 135. So it's root a quarter times root 2 over 2, I think, which is root 2 over 8. And I think that will be the correct final answer for the exact value of sine theta. Um, and finally, you just did that one. Did not do that one. It's going to be a quadratic inequality, isn't it? Okay. I'll do this question, and that might be it for today. But um, a garden patio is made from 2 rectangles. The area of the patio is less than 51. Okay, so let's work out the area of the patio as best we can. So let's split this up down the middle and say that the area of this section of it is 8 times x minus 3. And then let's work out the area of this, which is 7 times x, 7x. Okay, that means, is this, that can't make any sense. For 4 mark, is that it? Make a difference. Okay, fine. Well, the total area then is 7x plus 8. Well, let's expand it out, 8x minus 24. And they've said that that is less than 51. So 15x minus 24 is less than 51. 15x is less than 51, add 24, which is 75. And x is less than 75 over 15. 5, isn't it? Okay, so I guess the question is, because I think most people can get this far, the question is what's going on here? And I think I know, because it's not true that x can be anything less than 5. It can't be anything less than 5, because for a start, it can't be 0, because we can't have a side that's 0. It can't be 1 either, because if it was 1, then this side becomes 1 take away 3. It becomes negative, so it can't be 1. It can't be 2, because if it's 2, then 2 take away 3 becomes negative. It can't be 3 exactly, because 3 take away 3 becomes 0, but it could be anything over 3. And that's the answer. Because it could be at least, it needs to be at least 3 for this all to work, basically. So it has to be more than 3. So it's less than 5, but it's got to also be more than 3. And so I think that's the answer to the question. So you'd get to x is less than 5, I think, which is why I thought it was too easy initially, and then I understood that yes, x is the length of a side. It can be less than 5, but it can't be like anything less than, it can't be minus a million. It doesn't make any sense for the length of a side. So you have to then figure out where it stops. And in this case, it can't be less than 3. Right. Assuming there's no other questions. Just as a reminder, from next week, pretty much next Friday, Saturday-ish, um, I'll be doing this every day. It is meant to be more geared towards obviously the year 11 students, but I think I'm going to send the invite, as it were, to the year 10 as well. So if you want fancy joining at any point to ask any questions, you might have some exams, um, presumably coming up at some point, end of year things. If you need any help with it, then I'll be available every single day for about 6 weeks. Maybe with the exception of Fridays. I can't figure this out yet, but roughly every single day, I will be available. Can I have help with circle theorem? Any specific things that you need help with? Because I did do two, three, four, about 4 or 5 of the questions already from the homework. What I would advise if you're having trouble with it, first of all, go over your notes, which explains all of the theorems. You need to make sure you understand what they are. You got to do that bit first. And homeostasis. Yeah, I would firstly just a reminder, everybody has technically got access, and it depends whether you've used it ever before or not, to a load of videos that explain this from me. I made them. Explaining things like homeostasis and the topics like the nervous system and insulin and all this stuff. A circle theorem video exists as well somewhere. But you do actually have access to this stuff. But if you don't and you don't know how to access it, then you need to just send us a message on the WhatsApp and then I can set it up for you in case it already is set up. You just don't know your password because someone's not shared an email with you. But you could find it on those things, and that's what I would advise you to do. In the chat, you have links to the notes to all of these topics. Go through those, and then if you're still unsure, then watch a video. And if you don't have anything, then tell us on the WhatsApp, and I can send you the link to those things. But for the time being, I think that will be it for today. I'll be back next Wednesday, possibly, actually, probably not next Wednesday because most of you will have a test. But then from next Friday, Saturday onwards for about 6 weeks, I'll be available every single day for anything that you might wish to ask on. And it'll be the same link, I think. It'll just be on here. That'll be it. So you can just join and ask whatever you like. Right. I think that's it for today. I'll see you later.